Howdy, y'all. Caleb here. It's Battlescroll update day. Yes, this is like Christmas before Christmas, getting to open our presents early. So, has Seraphon gotten any better, or are we kind of in the same spot we were before? For reference, here is some of the latest meta, stat win rates from Wohammer, and that shows Seraphon, pretty near the bottom. We're still in the acceptable range at a 46% win rate, but towards the lower end of things. There's a couple of you guys out there that have been doing pretty well. I think we've had one 5-0 list over the past few months. That's about it, but some respectable 4-1s going out there. In general, we're kind of at the lower half of the meta, so I expect to see some buffs to Seraphon in this Battlescroll update. Just as a quick overview, I think we do see some. Lord Kroak, who's going to be over here on our left side here as our main image, I think he's gotten a big buff. I think we're going to see Lord Kroak a lot more because of the buffs he's gotten. Most of the monsters have gone down in price. Are they playable? I think there's going to be a few of them that you're going to see quite often. I don't think it's still a monster army yet, but as they get cheaper and cheaper, they are looking a little bit nicer to play monsters. Definitely, they can be used in your army to help out. So monsters are getting better. Some of the things we use a lot have gone up in a few points, like the Hunters and the Starseer. But in general, most of the units weren't really touched. So most of our competitive units weren't touched. So that's nice. Our best performing lists aren't really too affected by this update. So that's pretty good. So we're going to take a look at some of the rules first that got updated because I think these are important. Now, these will affect everybody, not just Seraphon, but season rules. These are pretty interesting. I think in general, they're trying to disincentivize the double turn and incentivize taking more drops, more regiments. So I think you see this here with the season rules. So the first one is if you take a double turn, your opponent is the underdog for the rest of the battle or until they take a double turn. Ooh, you can see this will kind of depend, on the battle plan. Some battle plans, the underdog is very good, but in general, you kind of want to be the underdog if you can afford it in the points race. So if you take a double turn, your opponent is the underdog for the rest of the battle. That can be pretty big. The second one is if you're losing by 6 or more VP, you do not suffer any penalties for taking a double turn. So you can pick a tactic and the opponent doesn't automatically count as an underdog. So I think there's some play here between these two. If you want to really go, all gas, no brakes, like take a huge risk, you could purposefully go down by 6 points in turn 1, go for the double, and then just really try to lean into that. You wouldn't take any of the debuffs from the double. Now, I don't think that would, in general, be a wise decision, because if you fail that, you've just lost the game, probably. But there is a play for that. Like, don't deploy on any of your objectives. Just grab your battle tactic. Make sure they get a full 10 points. If they do that, then you're set up well for this. And then go for that double turn. Maybe not the best option, but it is an option there. I think, in general, this will offer another another debuff for taking that double turn. Already there was one. I think this one is going to try to disincentivize that a little bit more. We do get a couple new honor guard abilities, which are pretty interesting. We'll look at those here in a second. And if you have more regiments than your opponent, you can use a second honor guard ability on a unit in another regiment. So this one's interesting. You get another free buff, theoretically. So if you are building lists with more than 2 regiments, I think this is probably going to come up. We might see people taking 3 or more regiments to purposefully get this. It's not something you can necessarily rely on because it is based on your matchups. But if you are building a high drop list, I think that's perfectly fine now because you do have an ability to get extra stuff here. So that's kind of cool. Speaking of those honor guard abilities, we have the 3 returning. We have Special Assignment, Bodyguard, and Priority Target. It looks like, as far as I can tell, the only thing updated was some of the verbiage on how you pick a unit, but nothing really changed there. I think the best one At least one I generally always take is special assignment, because you can apply +1 rend to your hammer unit. So you're looking at Raptidons. If you're looking at Raptidons and you see that you're playing against a bunch of other cavalry, you can get +1 rend to the Raptidons' weapon attacks. Very good, because a lot of our hammers only have -1 rend anyway. So if you add this to whatever you're planning to attack with, Raptidons, Agrodons, Kroxagor, I think this is probably still the go-to for your big unit. It really helps out the stuff that we have. So Bodyguard is still good if you're trying to play a defensive style game. And Priority Target, I don't know that has as much use with us. But it is nice. We have a lot of our stuff doesn't really benefit from Priority Target as much, because it won't affect companion weapons. So like Agrodons and Raptidons, you don't get really the full benefit out of it. It's still good, but you wouldn't get the full benefit out of it. And then we don't really have any good shooting to make use out of this. Kroxagor would be one that would potentially be worthwhile taking on this, because all their attacks are none of them are companion, but they're already wounded on 2, so it's not really that useful, at least in my experience. The new ones, we have Field Sergeant here. So Field Sergeant, you pick a friendly non-fly infantry hero in, but not leading, a regiment to be that regiment's honor guard. You can pick a unit in reserve. Effect, add 2 to the move characteristics of friendly non-fly infantry units while they're wholly within 12 of the honor guard. So think of this like Beastmaster, but for infantry. Oh, okay. So this is interesting. So I'm looking at Kroxagor. I can give Kroxagor +2 move. I can give Warriors or Guard +2 to move. So now all of a sudden, Kroxagor can be a little bit faster. So if you're building into a Kroxagor list, definitely look into Field Sergeant, because this is something that can make them faster. This plus the movement asterism, and now your Kroxagor are at +4 to move, and we can make them run and charge. So the same kind of synergies that we have with Agrodons, we can now get on our Kroxagor, our Warriors, our Guard. I think Warriors, this is a good ability, because we have an infantry hero that can fulfill this, but also you're trying to get them onto those objectives. And so sometimes you'll be 1 or 2 inches off of getting all your Warriors on an objective. So this will help out in those instances. So I think Field Sergeant for us is going to be pretty good. We have some good infantry that can make use of that. So I like that one. Prize Beast is another one I think has some use in Seraphon. So Prize Beast, pick a friendly non-unique monster in but not leading a regiment to be that regiment's honor guard. You can pick a unit in reserve. That unit can ignore the effects of the battle damaged ability. In addition, add 1 to hit rolls for combat attacks made by the honor guard. This ability affects companion weapons. So this is nice here. So as I'm thinking Prize Beast, what would I want to include in this? You're looking at your Bastillodons, which probably don't really benefit from this too much. They don't get battle damage, but also their combat attacks really aren't that great. You're taking them for utility for the Ark of Sotek. For the Solar Engine, you're just not taking. But this only affects combat attacks, so it would be nice if this was shooting attacks. One that I think might go into this would be like an Engine of the Gods. Could be interesting. Engine of the Gods is getting cheaper. This will make it to where you don't have to spend all-out attack on it. And now its weapon profile it's okay. It's not bad. It's not good. It's not terrible, but it's going to be okay. So this is a decent buff. This is one I think you take if you're not picking Field Sergeant as your extra bodyguard or honor guard ability. Then you take Prize Beast. I'm not sure you lean into this for anything, because we don't really have anything that's doing like massive damage as a Prize Beast, but it is nice though. This won't work on like Carnosaurs, unfortunately. So you are looking at the Stegaggedons and the Bastillodons, I think is all I can think of that this would be useful for. So, but it is useful. One thing about Field Sergeant, this is, an interesting lock behind this infantry hero that's in the regiment but not leading it. So we saw a bunch of armies get extra abilities to bring in units into regiments. We still only have, and I'll scroll down to it real quick here, we still only have 2 that actually can fulfill this role. The Source Astrolith Bearer and the Skink Star Priest. I would have liked to have seen a few more pop into that, like the Old Blood, or, I mean, even the Starseer. I mean, that could have gone into one, right? So I think you'll be looking at that for the Star Priest if you're looking for buffing up Kroak, or you'll add it as the Astrolith Bearer for Source stuff if you're looking to move them. So I think that's pretty interesting. So I think those are some good rules. I think that'll help us out. But of course, this is helping everybody. So as we look at the Seraphon specific things, just remember we do need to see some buffs here because Seraphon is a little low on the totem pole right now. For a summary of what's changing, these are kind of the big overarching changes for Seraphon. We have Lord Kroak now has +1 to unbind. Ooh, okay. So I like this. Lord Kroak still has the board-wide unbind, so now we get the +1 to unbind. This actually makes him a very good defensive piece. There's not a lot of unbinds in the game right now. So Lord Kroak getting +1 to unbind is nice. Also, his Celestial Deliverance has been reworked to increase the range and make the damage more reliable. We'll look at it in here in just a second. This is going to make Kroak very much more playable than he was before. Ripperdactyls and Terror Riders now have 2-inch coherency range. I'm going to be honest, I thought they still did that. I think I may have played my Ripperdactyls wrong the last game I played them. But that is good. I apologize to my son for the last time I played the Ripperdactyl Riders and thought they had 2-inch. Didn't they have that last edition or something? Or am I just mixing that up with other units? Anyway, that is a good change for them. So let's take a look at Lord Kroak, because I think this is probably going to be our most increased War Scroll usage in our army. So Lord Kroak, I think, is going to see the table a lot more now. So here you can see the actual changes over here on the left. In the effect of Supreme Master of Order, replace plus add 2 to casting with add 2 to casting rolls and add 1 to unbind rolls and banishment rolls for this unit. So Kroak is a lot more reliable as a unbinder now and a banisher. So this will allow him to get play a little bit more defensive in the magic phase. Love that. But I think really what makes Kroak stand out now is in the declare step of Celestial Deliverance, replace 12 inches with 18 inches. And also change the effect to inflict D3 mortal damage on each target. You can see the full War Scroll over here. So this was my complaint with Kroak all along. The range was too short and the damage was unreliable, because even if you got the spell off, you might fail the damage. They fixed both of those. Fantastic. Kroak is now, I think, what he should be. So 18-inch range is pretty standard for a caster that's doing damage, I think. And so I think that's what Kroak needed to be. Makes him much more playable, a lot harder for the opponent to avoid his damage, and when you get the spells off, you'll actually be doing at minimum 1 damage. So this is nice. So you can reliably get some decent damage onto units with Lord Kroak. That doesn't mean turn 1 you're probably going to be hitting with this spell, but turn 1 you're going to be casting endless spells. You're going to be casting buff spells. You're going to be doing those types of things and then getting him into range of 18 inches to do this mortal damage. Love it. The other things that make Kroak good, I mean, he is a good spellcaster, obviously. He does 3 casts, all at +2. Now he's going to be a good defensive unbinder and banisher. He still has a little bit of a random death mechanic, but I think it's worth it now for what you get. Kroak does have a 4-up ward and a 4-up save on 18 wounds. That will potentially heal everything at the end of the turn. So very tough. I think you can play fairly aggressive with Kroak, which I think you've been able to do before. You had to do it before. In general, a lot of stuff is going to have a hard time, getting through a 4-up. And so that makes him pretty tough. So I think you can play a little bit more aggressive with him. damage in combat's nothing, it's not great. Sometimes it'll spike. He does have a weird little shooting attack. But I think Kroak is quite playable now. Love this change. Absolutely love this change on Kroak. So I think you'll see him a lot. Let's take a look at the battle profiles that changed here. And we're going to see a lot of stuff going down, but a lot of stuff that wasn't really used that often. So I think they're trying to incentivize things that weren't being used in our book to be used a little bit more. So the Saurus Astrolith Bearer goes down to 130. And this hero is one that can be a favored spawning. So can be brought into the extra battalions as a unit in the regiment. So what can take favored spawning? Most of the Saurus heroes can. Lord Kroak can, and Slon can. So he can go into any of those regiments. I guess technically, I may have said that wrong. So like up here on Field Sergeant, and I think this is what this is why you would be taking him for Field Sergeant. So you could take the Saurus Astrolith along with Kroak, and they could buff up the Kroxigor. Would give the Kroxigor a 6-up ward, but also gives them +2 to move. So you could use the Saurus Astrolith for both Kroxigor and Saurus. Okay, interesting. Yeah, I like that. Let's look at these monsters here, because the monsters are going to be interesting, I think. So Old Blood on Carnosaur dropped down 40 points. As far as like Battlescroll changes go, 40 points is about as much as they're willing to do. So 40 points is a big drop. So 40 points for the Old Blood on Carnosaur, 40 points for the Scar Veteran on Carnosaur, 40 points for the Oracle on Troglodon, and then I want to highlight 40 points on the Stegaggedon Chief. So all these hero monsters all went down 40 points, which is a big decrease. So I think the Saurus Old Blood on Carnosaur is good. It was a little overcosted, so I think 290 is getting up down to about where it should have been. You can load out the Carnosaur to do some interesting stuff, to be ethereal, to heal, and on the charge, it will actually do some decent damage. So the Old Blood on Carnosaur is a good pick. The Scar Veteran on Carnosaur at 230 that's a bargain. It doesn't do as much damage. It doesn't have as much utility as the Old Blood, but for only 230 points, you almost don't care. You can throw that thing out there, and it does what kind of a monster is supposed to do, and you can still take some decent artifacts and heroic traits on it if you want to, and it's decent. It's got some weird, like the weird rampage that I don't really care for, but for 230 points, I think you're okay with that. It's only 40 points more expensive now than the Scar Veteran on Aggredon. So if you're not leaning like full into Aggredons, maybe you take the Scar Veteran on Carnosaur and along with, one unit of Aggredons, and that makes a pretty potent punch to slam both of those things into the opponent. Scar Veteran or Skink Oracle on Troglodon down to 240. It's a decent piece as a caster, like slash monster. It doesn't do like a whole lot of damage really. So I think it still suffers from the same problems it has before. It's a decent model at a lot, but not real good at any one thing other than just like staying alive. So I don't know that this will increase its use all that often, especially with the new hotness of Lord Kroak coming in. But the points reduction is nice. Skink Star Priest goes down 10 points to 100. That's a good price point there. 100 points for this little guy. His buff is decent. It's not great, but with the new Field Sergeant, I think the Star Priest has an interesting role because it can join Lord Kroak's or Salon's regiment. So if you're taking either one of those, you can toss in the Star Priest to work that Field Sergeant buff, the Honor Guard. So I like that. That's pretty interesting. 100 points is a great price point. The Starseer did go up 10. We see the Starseer a lot. It is a very good caster. I think 10-point increase isn't going to make you not take the Starseer if you were taking it before. And so we'll just have to find ways to reduce our points by 10 to keep the Starseer in. I'm going to park a little bit here on the Stegaggedon Chief because 200 points for the Stegaggedon Chief is awesome. I've wanted an excuse to run Stegaggedons again, and I think GW just gave me the excuse. So a Stegaggedon Chief at 200 is perfect. I like that. I guess theoretically you could run 10 of them. Don't do that. That'd be silly. But I guess you could fill up 5 regiments and then auxiliary units, right? Don't do that. But I think what the Stegaggedon Chief does at 200 points is good. So let's say you give him the ethereal. Let's say you load him out like heroic traits and artifacts, ethereal, healing. All of a sudden, the Stegaggedon Chief is going to be tough to kill. It can do decent mortals from its rampage when it charges. It can let things redeploy for free. So like a skink unit. And so you could redeploy like your skinks or let's say your Raptidon chargers. So it pairs well with them. I like the Stegaggedon Chief at 200 points. It's nice. I think it was already playable at 240 in certain lists, and at 200 points, I think it's good. It unlocks Kroak. It unlocks skinks. So if you're playing a Saurus side and you want to access some of the skink stuff, the Stegaggedon Chief I think is a good play. I like him there. All right, let's look at the units that got updated. Acrodon Lancers did not change in price. I was hoping they were going to go back down 10 points to where they were previously. I think they're a little I think they're like 10, 20 points too much, to be honest. We'll see. We'll see how everything shakes out. Bastildon with the Ark of Sotek. So you'll see here, like our monsters are all going down in points. Bastildon with Ark of Sotek went down 30 points. I like this. Ark of Sotek was already good, but I think there's some good stuff here that you can pair this with, okay? So think about Lord Kroak. If we're taking Lord Kroak now, he's doing mortal wounds at range. Let's put him into Sunclaw and a couple of Source Warriors or Source Guard. We're getting mortal wounds that way as well. And then pair it with a Bastildon with Ark of Sotek, and you've got more mortal wounds. All of a sudden, we're outputting a lot of mortal wounds from Kroak, Endless Spells, Bastildon, Ark of Sotek, and then Sunclaw. All of a sudden, we've got a lot of mortal wound output. And it all comes at weird times, so it kind of spread across the entire turn. So I like that a lot. 230 for the Ark of Sotek is good. Bastildon with Solar Engine, I still don't know that it has a role. Maybe at 240, you could slot one in maybe. Its shooting is kind of subpar. It can get locked down in combat, and it's never going to get out of that. So it plays kind of a weird role of that artillery piece that it just really isn't doing enough damage and doesn't really have... It doesn't have any other uses. It's not like this is going to be doing something interesting. It's just pure damage, and it just doesn't do much. So like if you're comparing it to like the OBR catapult that does better damage, but also has cool abilities that go along with it. It still has all the downsides of this, but it offers something interesting. So I don't know. I think it needs a little bit more on its war scroll or extremely cheap before it becomes a staple. Engine of the Gods though down 30 points to 180. Whoo. All right, so now you're gonna make me put in an Engine of the Gods, aren't you? I liked it at 210. I've played it, and it did what it was supposed to do. But now the Engine of the Gods can benefit from the Prized Beast Honor Guard, but also only 180 points. I'm gonna find a spot for this engine, and then just pray that you're rolling a 6. So I like the engine now. Maybe I'm liking all these things too much, but I like the engine at 180. I think it has a role. It can fit into quite a few regiments, and if you have more drops than your opponent, maybe you give it Prize Beast to where you don't have to worry about buffing it up on the charge or anything. I mean, it's still not going to do a whole lot of damage on the charge, but at least it's better on the charge. So I like that. Hunters of Huanche with Starstone Bolas. This is probably the one that's going to hurt the most. This will probably hurt just about every single Seraphon list, going up 10 points. Because generally we include 2, sometimes 3 if you're a little crazy. But this one will probably hurt every list. So Hunters of Huanche with Starstone Bolas up 10. I think this may push a lot of our lists just back down into the dark pipes. Maybe we give up the ability to reduce a charge by 6 inch or by 1 dice, and just play them as, you know, the prospector role, the unit that's going to score battle tactics and pop up and ambush the opponent's territory. So maybe this forces us to just go all dark pipes. I don't know. Kroak, the regular Kroak up 10 or down 10. I'm sorry, down 10. So I think they're Kroak were good. I don't think this pushes you into like taking them over War Spawn. I think you still have to kind of balance your list out a little bit. But if you're facing a lot of infantry in your meta, a lot of hordes, these Kroak can absolutely slap. So if I'm playing a Kroak heavy list, usually I like to have one of both, the normal and the War Spawn, just so I can respond to what I need to attack. But yeah, that's good. Kroak down points. I like that. No changes on War Spawn, Raptidon, Hunters, or Chargers. Source Guard didn't change. Source Warrior down 10 points. I like this. So this is, you might see some lists pop up that are like just heavy defensive lists now. Warriors going down 10 points. Doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're reinforcing it, that's 20 points. When you're bringing more than one, now all of a sudden you're making up some extra points. Kroak is playable now. And so maybe you play like a Kroak warrior heavy list. It could be pretty interesting. Skinks down 10 to 80. It makes them fill a role. Like if you're just looking at an extra 80 points and you need something, throw some Skinks in there if you have the right regiments. I don't think that makes us like want to play them, but it does make them cheaper. So I think that's good. Spawn of Chotek down 30, another big drop. I guess it depends on how much you like rolling 1 dice and a 4-up. Because the Spawn of Chotek has a great ability, but it's 1 dice roll, and it's on a 4-up to hit. So it is so unreliable. So unreliable. I think this Spawn of Chotek, it needs 120 would be a good price point if it had 2 attacks. Its War Scroll needs to be fixed. It needs to have 2 attacks so that you can reasonably expect one to get through to proc its ability. So I think its War Scroll still just needs +1 attack. That's it. Stegaggedon. Okay, Stegaggedon is 220. How in the world is a Stegaggedon cheaper than the Stegaggedon, or more expensive than the Stegaggedon Chief? The Stegaggedon Chief is 20 points cheaper than the Stegaggedon. I don't understand that, but interesting. The Stegaggedon Chief literally does everything better than the Stegaggedon, so I don't know why you would take a Stegaggedon unless you just need it to fit into a regiment. And at that point, you're probably better taking the Engine of the Gods for 40 points cheaper. So a very weird price point for the Stegaggedon. It almost seems like this missed that same 30-point decrease that everything else had. Why is this not down 30 points to 190? Make it a little bit more expensive than the engine because it has some shooting, I guess. Its melee is the same, so it could be literally the same price point as the Engine of the Gods. You could drop this down 40 points and it would be comparable to the engine. You'd still have to try to decide which one do I want to take. One that has a cool ability or one that has some shooting. So Stegaggedon, for some reason, is more expensive than the Stegaggedon Hero. I don't know. Pterodon Riders are down 10 points to 90. With the new coherency, I think Pterodon Riders make an interesting screen / objective grabbers. They're now cheaper than Hunters of Huanche with Starstone Bolas. So if you're in that 90-point range, you can't quite afford Hunters of Huanche with Bolas. Maybe you take some Pterodon Riders. They're not going to do a lot of damage. They're not going to hardly do any damage. They might do a few mortal wounds, like literally 1 or something. But they're fast. They make decent screens, and they can go grab battle tactics and objectives. So at 90 points, Pterodon Riders seem like a decent pick. Ripperdactyls are 20 points more now. So are you taking them for the damage? If so, take Ripperdactyl Riders. They are fairly efficient at damage output. They don't do a ton of damage, but if you're just looking to play board control, I think I would take Pterodon Riders over Skinks. 10 points more. You might think about taking them over Hunters, because if you're not looking for this ability, they're kind of in that same price range. So interesting. Pterodon Riders might be a decent pick for board control. Terra Wings are just our absolute cheapest unit here at 70 points. They went down 20. So if you're in that weird range of 70 points, they do have a useful ability. It doesn't really, I mean, it's kind of hard to go off with it. But, you know, it plays a role. It's 70 points. It's cheap. I guess theoretically in a perfect world, you get Spawn of Chotek to go off for that -1 rend. You get Terra Wings to make it to where they can't use command points. You get Purple Sun into them for another, you know, -1 of their save, and you have special assignment for +1 rend. I guess that would be the ideal world where all of these buffs happen. That's a lot of ifs, though. But you could make it work. All right, I think that's all for the points. Oh, we had some Regiments of Renown go down in points. So I think Bundo Whalebiter is interesting. There was a list recently that did really well. I think it went 4-1 with a Bundo Whalebiter in it. So it's a big, heavy piece. You know, for 420 points now, it can do some decent damage. It can hold an objective really well. It can kick objectives around. So if you're having, pair this up right here, Bundo Whalebiter and Source Warriors. Now you can kick an objective to the Warriors. Interesting. So maybe there's some play there. Gotrek got cheaper, 20 points cheaper. I haven't seen anybody play Gotrek. He can still do an absolute massive amount of damage, but very slow. I think, maybe I'm wrong here, but I think that you could you do Field Sergeant? Let's see. Pick a friendly non-infantry hero. So let's say you pick like a Starseer or the Ashleth, but not leading a regiment to be that regiment's honor guard. You can pick a unit in reserve. Add 2 to the move characteristics of friendly non-fly infantry units. That's Gotrek. While they're wholly within 12 of the honor. I think you could give Gotrek +2 to move. Interesting. He's friendly, non-flying infantry. So maybe. He goes from 4 to 6. So maybe there's some play there. He does a ton of damage. He's a lot easier to kill now. Saviors of Cinderfall went up 40 points. That's a pretty big increase. I think that was probably pretty warranted. They are very good. Saviors of Cinderfall is a great Regiment of Renown. I think at 270, you make room for them if you're playing. So 40 points, I think you just make room for them somehow, because it is a very good Regiment of Renown. Some FAQ, some errata stuff. No, you don't have to set up your terrain feature if you don't want to, but if you choose to, you got to do it in the correct order. I think that's all that. If somebody's hiding in their terrain feature, we can hit them with our Realm Shaper engine power. Not a big deal there. Some other stuff, covering fire. I think they just worked on some wordage. I'm not exactly sure what this change was supposed to be. I don't worry about covering fire too much because we have like terrible shooting. So I'm not well versed in this. If they did not use a run ability this turn and is not in combat to use this ability, then pick the closest enemy unit picked as a target of the shooting attacks. I don't know what changed here. I think maybe they added this, but I think that's the only thing that would affect was like redeploy, but they've already FAQ'd that. I don't know. Let's see, what else did they add here? Contesting and objectives. I'm not sure. I think they just cleared up some verbiage here. Counter charges 2 command points. I think they're just clearing up some verbiage here. Strike last. I have no idea what that affects. Both player units have strike last. They removed this. They alternate fighting with those units. So there must have been somebody that was abusing that for something. I don't know. I don't know what that was about. All right, so I think that's for our changes. I want to stop. I want to look real quick at some of our top performing lists and how they have changed. So let me pull that up real quick. All right, so this was our 5-0 list that happened a month or two ago. This was from Vincent, and let's see what how it affected his list. So he already is at 1960. So I think he was future-proofing his list here. 2-drop, Shadow Strike, Morbid, all that kind of stuff. But we do have the Bestilled On with Arc of Sotek, so we're gaining 30 points here already. Warspawn didn't change, Raptidons didn't change, Star Priest, so he's got another 10 points. So now he's down another 40 points. So he's at 1920. He does gain 10 points on each of these Hunters of Huanche, but he can absorb that easily. So this list, this 5-0 list, has a lot. I mean, he's got room to play. He's down another 40 points, so he's got 80 points. He can throw in another unit of Skinks. He could, well, not in any of his regiments, but he could. He's got 80 points to play with. So there's some room to improve this list. So that's good. This one was from Chase. He went 4-1. This was a Kroak list. So I kind of wanted to look at this one because this is a Kroak list that did well. He went 4-1, and he was already doing well with Kroak. I think this list just gets better. So he's at exactly 2,000 points, 2-drop, Agrodons, Raptidons, Source Guard, Kroak. Starseer goes up 10 points, and Hunters of Huanche go up 10 points. So he's got to clear 20 points if he wants to take the same list. I think all you do in this list is you reduce these Starstone Bolas to Dart Pipes, and that negates the extra 10 points up here. So you can essentially take the same list with just dropping the Bolas for Dart Pipes. So I think this list just, maybe it's a little worse without the Bolas, but I think they still perform a decent role as the Dart Pipes. So I think this list is just fine. Harry's list here, Sunclaw Agrodons, 2-drop, Slann. This one's going to go up 10 points, and that's it. So he's got to get 10 points out of this list. I think it's going to be the same story in a lot of these. You could play the same list just by dropping this to Dart Pipes. I think you'll see that over and over again. Ozzy is starting this at 1970, so he's got a little room to work. Slann, Agrodons, Guard, Starseer, so that we can absorb that, and we can absorb this one. So no changes needed for this list. This was another 4-1 list. I think he works well here. What we got? We got Hakan with Seraphon 3-drop. He has a Regiment of Renown. So this one's probably going to take the biggest hit because that's going up 40 points. What else does he have here? Starseer's going up 10. So this list is going up a total of 60 points. So he's going to have to work on this one a little bit, I think, if he wanted to take the same list. So there's ways around that. You can, 60 points we got to clear. Maybe you drop down some Raptidon Chargers. You could reduce them down to some Terra Wings, or not Terra Wings, Pterodon Riders, and drop this one down to Dart Pipes, and then you could still fit this same list, I think. Okay, not bad. Kyle went 4-1, also with this list, Shadow Strike list. Do we get some extra points from the Source Warriors? So we get an extra 20 points there. We get another 10 points here, so we're 30 points up. And I think that's it. Oh, and he was already 20 points down. So you've got another 50 points to work with in this list. So that's pretty nice. You can change some things around there. 50 points. I'm looking at it. I'm not sure exactly because it looks like he's going for a theme here with these Raptidon Hunters and Chargers. So interesting. He's doing some shooting stuff here. So maybe you upgrade this Hunters here. You got an extra 50 points to work with. Cool. All right, so I think that's a look at our list. Oh, okay. List spot's already updated. What do you think about this? I was trying to think, could I bring back Stegaggedon? This is a 5-drop list, and I've still got 100 points to spare. 5 Stegaggedon Chiefs, 5 Engine of the Gods. Then maybe we could throw in some, let's see, we could throw in some Bolas into a list, or some Skinks maybe, or Pterodon Riders to be just something fast. So you definitely got something you could work with there. Maybe there's a Stegaggedon list that's viable again. I think there's going to be some interesting monster stuff. I just got to work out the points. Everything going down that many points, there's going to be an interesting monster mash list somewhere in there. So, all right, guys, I think that's it for today. We got some good points decreases. Let me know what kind of list you're thinking about taking and what you're excited about. Are you finally going to dust off Kroak and a Stegaggedon Chief? I think I am. All right, guys. Catch you next time.